right? So as you can see, it's like it can connect to a whole bunch of data sets. Whatever, as many data sets, you can expose it. It is, you can do that. And then there is, and before you start, you just have to set the context on, what data set, we are really using. And then say, for example, in this particular one, there is something called sales data set. And this is called as the glossary. So basically, these are the attributes which are there in the data set. And as you can see, so it also has, say, for example, for this particular attribute called customer name, right? It has there is something called also called this is what we really mean by creating a vocabulary or the synonyms. Because say for example, I can ask this question on, hey, so I can even ask customer, or the same question I can even ask, like, for the similar use a synonym, and ask, say, for example, the actual data name, I mean, was customer name. I can still ask the question in customer, it is going to respond back. And so this is one way of using a language interface where you can define a whole bunch of synonyms for the attributes. Say for example, the users need not know postal underscore product ID and all that. They can just use it based on the name which they are familiar with, closer to the business and all that, right? I think the language interface kind of provides this significant advantage where, by the definition of synonyms, you have an ability to make it that much more, very useful and, more business term, like, for any of your data attributes. So it's this is one significant, uptick of using an interface like this, where the users really can, without the challenges of, let me give you another example. Say for example, this is something, which okay, let me take this, for which we are working with one of the mock data sets, working for a customer for us. It's You can see here, some of these names are pretty big, say for example, gross sales volume PU. I mean, this is how the technical name is, but they can really give a very simple, term which is very commonly used by the business folks. So something like, GSP, POM. I mean, all these are terms, which the business is familiar with. They can add these as synonyms, and then, without knowing the technical names, the business users can use the names, which they are familiar with, and then, right. Um, so let me go back to. So, when I ask, say for example, let me start a new thread and ask questions like, hey, so it gives me a chart, and then that there is a whole bunch of stuff I can do. I can change the visualization types I want, and I mean, as I said, you can also go back. I mean, look at the underlying, I mean, the details, not necessarily the response, and it also comes up with a whole bunch of prompts. Say for example, I can go to the insights. I can ask for something like, so since we're talking about Texas here, I can ask for something, it would compare the other states across these, the different categories. Since we're talking about categories in, a particular state, it also provides you an option to compare it against the other states, right? And say, I mean, there is a whole bunch of other, it can do a distribution. And then say, for example, if I ask something like, so I do have a trend here, and since we're talking about a trend, you have an ability to, so it can do a forecast. All these things, it kind of comes, without the need to. So which anything which is in purple, it's basically the forecast here. All these things, comes without writing a single line of code, right? I think that's the key thing about it, in the sense, once you train a data set on Kia. I mean, and all these questions, you know, you can call it as very similar to, if you're familiar with the chat GPT term of prompts. These are, call this prompts. And then, once you ask a prompt, it just keeps responding back to that. And also say, it gives a lot of contextual suggestions, since we are talking about a daily trend here. I mean, you can very easily, if you want, it just all these things, are possible within this, right? So, and the other thing is, as a user, you can train Kia on multiple data sets and then make it available. And say for example, in this particular one, I'm just looking at this particular metric, and then, I know that another person is responsible for this. The way we normally communicate these days is, we might take a screenshot of this or email this to somebody. There is a whole bunch of integrations you can do, right? Say, for example, if you really want to create a task for somebody, we use Notion internally. Any kind of integrations, whether it is Notion or Jira or whatnot, all these, there is a whole bunch of out of the box integrations available. Or you can even say, I can even post this in Teams, and then, say I can say that, share this with myself, and it'll just post, make it available in Teams for me, and right. There is a whole bunch of things, we can do. Or say for example, if or what I can also do is, I can invite other people into this conversation. That way, both of us can now talk to Kia, and then, look at the data, rather than me taking a screenshot, communicating. The way the interaction normally happens is, you send an email, somebody will say, hey, no, this is not, this is why it is, and then this is what I'm looking at this. Rather, to resolve issues like this, why can't we bring collaboration within the product itself, right? I think that's what we are trying to do here, with you can bring in the user now, as you, the other users, and Kia, all of them can look at the same version of the data, and then, converse, right? The same thing, whatever, you just did within this chat application, you can do the same thing here. So it's basically a simple search widget, which can be embedded anywhere within that app, and what are all your historical queries, you have a way to make them available in inbox. You can favorite them. And the key feature around storytelling part, right? Let me just say for example, I'm doing an analysis on, say, I'm responsible for the West region. I have a performance meeting coming up, so I can ask something like, hey, so I ask a question like this, and this one I can now, create. So I can have something like, so I create a story. This is, so I can add a narrative to this, and then, right now I can also say that by city. Okay. I'm creating a whole bunch of, so this is, I was telling you, right? I mean, the way you can even structure the story, I want to, just look at it different by the different cities. I can add it to my same story here, and then, I add it here. Now I say that, so I have something here. I would also like to add this, and, I can just keep adding this. So now, once you have built a story like this, right, I think, you have an option to, here is your, I mean, rather than looking at statics, metrics, which we normally use in presentations and all this, these are, in fact, if you play them, and of course, there is, I'm sharing the microphone here, but the whole story can be played, in a voice where it will, Kia will play back the response, and then, so you can, as you are navigating, this is actually the real time data as of that particular instance when you are presenting this. So these are your visuals, and then the data which you are presenting is not necessarily, as of whenever you created it, is these are the live data. And this is one way of just making the metric or making the story that much more current. As of as and when you're presenting it, you can make use of the current data, and the whole voice narration also comes along with it, right? So this is these are like the two the channels on the web, right? Let me quickly show the mobile version of it. Just give me 1 second. Casting my mobile phone here. Okay. So here, the Kia, this is the Kia mobile app. I mean, just like the same way, how we looked at it. It's like I start with the same, the data set, whatever, since these are all omni-channel applications, whatever questions I had asked in the other channels, those are still, available I mean, I can use this, whether I'm traveling or where, I can just use the same interface and then ask the same question. So it's like I can go here and similar kind of questions, in both voice and text, I can just ask and then, it is going to respond back, right? I think um, that's exactly happening. Okay. Yeah. So even here, just like, how we were so if I go here, I can bring in other users, just like how we might chat with other friends, and then we can bring them on board here, and then chat, and then look at the same data, right? I think all these features of in terms of whatever we saw on the web, it is also especially on the mobile app, for people who are on the Mu, and one of the common use case where our users, mainly use the mobile is it's on the voice interface, right? I think, especially on an iPad, it is almost like, when you have it on the meeting room or anything, it is almost like having a virtual data analyst on the, room, and then which you can just use to ask those questions and then, get the data, right?